And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the second Wayniac Nation Fantasy Football Starts and Sits Spectacular. I am your host, Wayne Cavati, former CEO of the Wayniac Nation blog. And joining me, as always, are my two partners in crime and former writers from the site. Live from Tobacco Road, Mike Dunton is with us once again. Dunton, how are you?
I'm doing well. I think we should only focus on my sits because I don't know how to start a team, but I can tell you who to sit really well.
You did great last week. That is very true. You got us a goose egg on one of your sits, which was a good move. And live from New York, our daily fantasy football specialist, Chris Fiamano. FanDuel Fee, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I got some interesting values for you this week for DFS.
Well, speaking of interesting values, I took our own FanDuel Fees advice last week and finished second in the tournament based on your value picks. So if you didn't listen to him last week, you have my endorsement this week, and you very well should be listening to his value picks for this week. If you listened to our show last week, you probably did pretty good, as Dutton already alluded to. He gave some really good sits that if you listened to him and didn't play him, you saved him yourself, like Calvin Ridley scoring nothing, and hopefully did a little bit better for yourself. While my Deshaun Watson, the Will Fuller double dip connection did very well for you if you started them. And as I just said, Fee's your Devontae Parker pick for league play Fee was really good, as well as Hawkinson sneaking in there with a touchdown. But your daily fantasy picks were spot on. Your value picks last week, and they really they really came through for us. So real quick, this is going to be the toughest week for us so far, because even though there was the Titans Steelers bye last week, this is the first week we've had to present starts and sits with buys, with the Packers on a bye and the Lions on a bye, and possible new COVID buys with the Raiders, the Patriots, and the Titans being affected, which means the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Broncos may be affected. So we really got to make sure that we get you the right advice here. On top of that, we had some great news from Houston this week with the firing. I'm sorry to be great, but I'm a homer. The firing of Bill O'Brien. We know that offense that team has been full of stars for the past few years. Fee, you see any fantasy impact here with Bill O'Brien gone?
I think I do. David Johnson, I feel like, should really kind of come into his own again, and be like he was back when he was with the Cardinals. So, there's a lot more to that, but I think David Johnson really is going to shine now that Bill O'Brien's gone.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's the guy that Bill O'Brien made the trade for. And now that he's gone, maybe he'll be utilized correctly. Dutton, how about you? Anything you see?
I think it opens up their offense. I think we're going to uncuff Deshaun Watson, right? Let's open him up. If he was a brand new car, kind of, let's test him. Let's push down the gas. I think it helps Will Fuller as long as he stays healthy. I think it helps Brandon Cooks tremendously. Those wide receivers. Right? We have 5 wide receivers that are supposed to replace DeAndre, right? So at least get them the ball. So let's see what happens if they can at least try. So I think it helps in that case. So we'll see. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, and kind of along with what you both said, Bill O'Brien traded a second-round pick for Duke Johnson last year, and he barely played 30% of the snaps. It's just like, why do you trade a second-round pick for a guy that you're not going to play? So I think Duke Johnson, he's a guy that you can line up in the slot. He's another one of those speedy receivers that could work well with Watson, and he's a good spelling third down, change of pace back for David Johnson when he needs a breather. So I think Duke Johnson may get a little bit of value in that flex position for bye weeks coming up here in the future. So, as I said, we got a lot of big names on bye this week. Aaron Jones, Galladay, Aaron Rodgers, now the big greatest tight end in fantasy football, Robert Tonyan. He's on a bye, so we got a lot of work to do here.
Amazing
fellas.
to think that a Green Bay Packer with Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback,
tight
is
end.
the tight end of the week, right?
All right. So we'll get started and we'll get you the picks to win you this week. And we'll start off with quarterback. Dunton, who do you like this week at quarterback?
I went with Kyler Murray playing a porous Jets defense.
Yeah. I wanted Phil Rivers or Kirk Cousins because of their matchup. But the problem is I don't trust Phil Rivers or Kirk Cousins ever, even if they're playing nobody, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'm going with the Rook, Justin Herbert, on Monday night against the Saints. Fee, who do you got?
I got Teddy Bridgewater, and he's playing Atlanta, who has just been a sieve all year long against the pass. Their secondary is terrible. Their defense is terrible. And Teddy Bridgewater was solid last week, and he's giving you even rushing yards to amp up your points. So I think Teddy Bridgewater is my start of the week this week.
Yeah, he may be the start of the week if you need a plug and play, especially if you have an Aaron Rodgers or Stafford that is your normal starter. Flipping over to running back. Fee, who do you got there?
My running back start is James. No, not James. Yeah, it is James Robinson. James Robinson.
Another week in a row. He did all right last week as our start of the week. He had over 12 points. Dutton, who are you thinking at running back?
Going back to that Civ defense in Atlanta, I'm going with Mike Davis of Carolina Panthers. So,
well, I'm going to go opposite of you, good sir, and I'm going to pick Gurley, who looked a little bit Gurley-esque last week, if you would. He got in the end zone twice. He's still not being asked to run a tremendous amount of times, but the Carolina defense is allowing 5.1 yards per carry and has also allowed 7 touchdowns on the ground this year. Julio Jones, we know, is out. I think they ride Gurley, especially, like I said, coming off a week that he looked a little bit like the Gurley of old last week, and he gets in the end zone at least once, probably twice again. That's taking us to wide receiver. I'm staying in this game because, let's face it, the Panthers and the Falcons, there's a lot of fantasy fun to be had in that game. And I'm taking Robbie Anderson. Fee mentioned that offense. If Teddy Bridgewater's our starter of the week at quarterback, he's got to be throwing the ball to somebody. They've allowed 1,400 yards, 13 TDs. Fee, who do you have there?
I'm going with Justin Jefferson, the rookie from Minnesota.
Nice. And Dutton, who's your play of the week?
I'm going to go with Amari Cooper.
Nice.
The Cowboys are in a must-win game, right? I would say must-win for the Cowboys, playing against no offense to our friend Fiamano, but playing against a terrible Giants team with an awful defense that cannot protect against the pass at all. Dak is playing amazing despite the Cowboys' record. I mean, if the Cowboys were a winning team, Dak Prescott would be in the MVP conversation, right?
Absolutely.
There's no conversation about it. So Amari Cooper, I mean, that offense is ready to explode. They have been exploding, right? And I think they start this game on fire and then take the brakes off a little bit because they're so used to having to play all 60 minutes the last couple of weeks. I think they need a game like this. But Amari, I think touchdown, 10 receptions maybe, 100-something yards. It's a good week for him. So
Big day. And that takes us, as we said, you got to replace the best tight end in fantasy football right now. So, Dutton, who are you going to replace him with?
With the second best tight end in fantasy football, George Kittle. So, I mean, coming off an injury, he had a huge –
He did. He had a monster week, but I think Travis Kelce may still have some words for you on that conversation. I like Mo Ali Cox on the Colts versus Browns game. Fee, what are you thinking there?
Yeah, I like Cox as well. I think Cleveland, they are pretty decent on offense, and so I feel like they're going to score some points. And their defense is not very good against the tight end. And Rivers is going to have to dump the ball off, and I think he's going to go to Cox often.
Mm-hmm. He seems to like him. You read the preseason reports, and it seemed like he'd be an afterthought, but he's certainly establishing himself early here as a guy that Rivers likes. And as you know from last week, if you watched our show, we don't do kickers and defenses. So we're just going to keep on rolling and go to our sits of the week. And we will start once again at quarterback. I'll start. We have a sit from last week that kind of surprised us. Fee, I believe you picked Carson Wentz last week, and he actually had his first strong game of the year. But I'm going to sit him against the Steelers this week. The Steelers, that defense, I mean, it's not like they played a slouch defense last week, but I'm going with Wentz, the bench, against the Steelers. Fiamano, who do you got?
I got Baker Mayfield going against the number one defense against the pass, the Colts.
And Dutton.
So we obviously do this show Wednesday night. We have our picks locked in usually Tuesday nights, Wednesday morning-ish. So Josh Allen was my pick before the COVID scare. And the reason I was going with Josh Allen was, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's having an amazing season. I just think that Titans defense was a little too much compared to what they played against. He cannot, I mean, trust me, it'd be great if he put up those numbers all year, but let's be realistic, he can't. I think this might be the game where he comes back down to earth a little bit, assuming they play this game. Now that this game is a question mark, really you might want to consider somebody else instead of Josh Allen. And if they do play, just be careful that he might come back down to earth this week against a tough Titans defense.
No, it's definitely, I mean, if you're looking at it on paper as that game's going to happen, it's definitely a tough defense that they're about to play. I mean, it's a question mark. And as we've talked about this year, in both my leagues, Josh Allen is a backup. He started the year as a backup, and he's in my one league. The guy has Mahomes because it was his keeper, and Josh Allen, and then in our combined league, the three of us, it's Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen. So Josh Allen is on teams that you have to make decisions. He wasn't picked as the guy when you picked him this offseason. So I think that's a smart pick. Let's go to running back. Dutton, you ended our quarterback conversation. Why don't you start our running back conversation?
I was going with Joe Mixon. Tough Baltimore defense. I mean, he can't have the weeks he's had every week. So that's where I'm going.
Fee?
Yeah, I had Mixon also.
Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah. Baltimore's D. He blew up last week. He's not going to do it again. He just had a Super Bowl.
I'm gonna go with a play tomorrow night, Montgomery. The Bucks are super stingy against the run, which I'm sure our Mike Dutton's very happy with. Allowing 2.7 yards per carry. They haven't allowed a run over 20 yards or 40 yards this season. You're not going to spring the big run to get those extra points. Montgomery's, what's his name's out. Tariq Cohen's out. Montgomery's a sexy pick right now because they don't have much depth at running back. But I just think that Bucs defense. It is a short week, but I just think that Bucs defense is really solid, and Montgomery's your sit of the week. Let's roll to wide receiver. I picked Fee's big start of the week last week, but they're going up against the 49ers this week, so I'm benching Devontae Parker. Fee, what are you thinking?
I'm going with Allen Robinson as my sit of the week this week. He's playing Tampa Bay. They've given up the last 2 weeks less than 300 yards passing. And if you count the first 2 weeks, they've only given up less than 200 yards in 2 of the 4 weeks. I think Tampa's defense is underrated. And I think that the Bears passing game is going to come back down to earth.
Dutton, what are you thinking there?
Mike Evans, just because short week, he was so banged up on Sunday. I'm just worried, does he even get out on the field? I mean, as a Bucs fan, I want him to play, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. So be cautious with Mike Evans.
Same reason I said he was the sit of the week last week, and he burned me there. That was my bad pick last week.
And he got hurt during the game and still played.
Yeah, let's head over to tight end. Dutton, what are you thinking there?
I went with Zach Ertz. Same reason that you had Carson Wentz as your sit, right? I just don't know if that Eagles passing game is going to be able to play against that Steelers defense. And that Steelers defense has had an extra week off. They were riding high after 2 solid weeks. So I would be worried about Zach Ertz this week.
Absolutely. Fee?
I'm going with Mike Gesicki. And and they're playing San Francisco in San Francisco. I know San Francisco's defense is very banged up, but he hasn't done jack the last
Nope.
2 weeks, and I don't believe that he's going to get on track.
Yeah, that's a tough place to get on track. I'm going Austin Hooper. The Browns, we already discussed a little bit about the Colts defense has been very good. They are actually number one against the tight end. And the best Browns touchdown pass last week was from Jarvis Landry to OBJ, and then you got OBJ rushing for a touchdown. I mean, who knows how this offense is supposed to run? The Colts defense isn't exactly the defense to figure it out. So I'm advising the bench pretty much any Brown this week if you can. So that's our starts and sits of the week. We have our two more sections, and we're moving to FanDuel Fees expert budget value picks of the week. What do you see this week for us?
Well, if they play, I like Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's price at $7,900. I like James Robinson. We spoke about him earlier. He's only at $6,600.
Oh wow!
If you're really ballsy, you can go with David Johnson in Houston. Now that Bill O'Brien's gone, he's only at $6,400. You got Robbie Anderson at receiver at $6,200. I really like CeeDee Lamb this week against the Giants. I know you went with Cooper earlier, but he's only $5,900. We talked about Teddy Bridgewater, and this isn't a value play, but I feel like paying up at tight end, going with Andrews this week is a solid play. He's up at $7,500.
Against the Bengals, right? Yeah. Well, there you have it, folks. You pick those plays, you might win yourself a tournament, or at least finish second like I did. I know we're getting there, though. We're getting there. Thank you, Fee, as always, for your valuable insight. And before we go, we like to make sure that you do survive every week, and you survive your survivor pool. If you listened to us last week, I picked the Packers. Fee picked the Rams, Dunton picked the Saints, and that means we were 3-0, and that means you all survived your pool if you rolled with us. So let's see if we could do the same for you this week. Fee, who do you have as your survivor lock pick of the week?
Well, I had a few, but I think my lock has got to be the Arizona Cardinals going against the Jets and Joe Flacco.
3 blue hens on the phone, and we're going to go against Flacco?
Sorry.
It's hard to go with them.
Dutton, what do you got?
It's going to be a bad week in New York. I'm picking the Cowboys against the Giants. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, like, there's Mike McCarthy's probably coaching for his job. The Cowboys, like, it's insane what's happening there after 4 weeks, right? Like, it's insane. So, Cowboys have to win this game, and they should. So, I'm going Cowboys.
All right. I'm going to take the Ravens. And as I did last week, I told you that I was taking the Packers, and I would take the Packers with the 7.5 spread. This week, the spread is 13.5 for the Ravens, and I never advise taking a double-digit spread in the NFL. But this week, I think I'm going to tell you to do it. But even if you don't, lock them in as your pick of the week and Survivor, and you'll be happy. So that's our show for the week. We like to make it short and sweet and hopefully win you a few games out there. So remember, subscribe, like us, ask us your questions in the comments, and we'll answer if we can with the best of our knowledge. And thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week.